Ooh, now the mic's on. Hello, everyone. Hi. I'm Kate McCombs, and I'm a sex and relationships educator. I am so delighted to be here. This is my second time at CMC, and I'm here to talk to you about incorporating pleasure into safer sex. And I'm here on behalf of O-School, and O-School is a live streaming platform for sex and pleasure education. And I'm also here because of the amazing advocates here at CMC who are here for your support. They've been incredible. I have felt so supported by them, and I know that they support you all year round. They have a 24/7 hotline and texting service to support survivors of sexual assault and domestic violence. So they're here to support you today and always. This is where you can find me here on my website, and you can find me on Instagram as well. And also on O-School, I'm going to be doing live streaming sex education workshops, both about safer sex and about sexual communication and pleasure in general. And I'll be talking more about that as the presentation goes forward. So a little more about me. This is me about 11 years ago with my friend Jenna when we were both students at UC Berkeley. We were both sexual health peer educators on campus, which meant we got this week-long training in how to deliver sexual health workshops on campus. And this day we were handing out these little packets of condoms and lube to students who came through the quad. And she had the penis costume on to draw attention to our safer sex endeavors. I was too short for the penis costume, like the balls dragged on the ground, so I had to like hold it up like a fancy skirt. But she's nice and tall. We both now have illustrious careers in public health. She works for the San Francisco Department of Public Health. So this has humble beginnings. But one of the things I learned from this job was that when people are practicing safer sex, it's really important to have a conversation about pleasure as part of that. When people do studies interviewing people about why they have sex, there are hundreds of reasons why people decide to have sex. But over and over again, the number one reason why people have sex is for pleasure, for intimacy, for that intensity of touch and enjoyment. But more often than not, when people are taught about safer sex, the messages that people receive are about fear, about avoiding pregnancy, about avoiding STIs. And that seems like a disconnect to me. Like if you're trying to get people to practice safer sex, you have to connect with their experience of why they're actually having sex. I think that's an important message. So I have a master's in public health. That's my academic background. I did that at the University of Melbourne in Australia, which is where I live. Actually, I still live in Melbourne, Australia. And that was a very cool experience to study public health somewhere where they had universal health care. The way that interacts with the prevalence of STIs and how health service is provided, that was a really cool educational experience. And in my work, I focus very strongly on empathy and communication because I think these are really important tools in how we navigate our intimate relationships. So you'll hear me talk a lot about communication in this presentation. And I'm also a pleasure professional at O-School. So we'll be talking about that at the end too. All right, so here's what I'm not here to do. I'm not here to just talk at you the whole time. This will be an interactive presentation. I'm not here to perpetuate the idea that STIs are scary, shameful, or something to be avoided at all costs. And I'm not here to shame you into using condoms or other barriers. I'm not into shame as a tool to get you to change your behavior. I'm here to teach you about how to incorporate these things into your life in a more gentle way. So here's what I am here to do. I'm going to bust some common STI myths. How many of you had sex ed growing up? How many of you had that sex ed be primarily fear-based? Curiosity, yeah, most of you. Okay. So I'm also here to give you some practical and sexy tools for practicing safer sex. I'm here to encourage you to have some mindful safer sex practices. And I'm here to answer your questions. I know there's a lot of you, and there might be a lot of questions. You should have some note cards on your table. If a question occurs to you during the presentation, feel free to write it down, and I'll be answering them at the end. And if I don't have time to answer all the questions, I'm actually going to devote an O-School stream to answering just your questions that people will have access to. Okay, so today's roadmap, I'm going to do an STI true-false quiz that is going to bust some common STI myths. And then I'm going to talk about how to make safer sex easier and sexier. And then we'll do the anonymous Q&A. All right, so you ready for the STI true-false quiz? We're going to make this just really simple. So I'm going to make a statement. It's going to be true or false. And then we're just going to have people raise their hand if it's true, and raise their hand if it's false. And then I'll tell you if it's true or false. And then we'll do a little education about it, all right? Does that make sense? So just to practice. So raise your hand if you think it's true. Everyone raise their hand. Okay, raise your hand if it's false. Okay, awesome. You all can raise hands. Excellent. Okay, first one. So this over here, have any of you seen these giant microbes? They're adorable, right? So this is what the herpes virus looks like under a microscope. And I think this is adorable. So when I do presentations about STIs, I love to show these. I do not show pictures of genitals with the most extreme manifestation of STI symptoms. And I'll tell you why I don't do that. So I think that perpetuates stigma, and it also perpetuates the idea that this is what STIs look like, and not all STIs look like those pictures, right? So I like to show these little giant microbes. So anyway, so true or false? Most STIs are asymptomatic, meaning they do not have symptoms. So do you think that's true? Okay, who thinks that's false? All right, ooh. Smart audience, true. That is absolutely true. Most STIs show no symptoms. So chlamydia is famously asymptomatic. The majority of people who have chlamydia have no symptoms at all. This is one of the reasons why it's so prevalent. People are just going about their business. Their body is showing no symptoms at all. If you have a sinus infection, you're symptomatic, like you're having stuff coming out your nose, and then you go to the doctor and you get it treated, right? But with chlamydia, you're often spreading it because you have no idea that you actually have that infection. So this is again one of the reasons why I don't show these pictures of STI-infected genitals, because people will get that idea that this is what an STI looks like. But if my genitals look completely normal, then I don't have an STI. And I think that's often a mistake that sex educators in high school can mistake. They use those images to create fear, like I'm going to show these to scare people into practicing safer sex, when what it really does is just perpetuate this idea that if you have an STI, it's going to look a certain way. So herpes can have symptoms. You can have an outbreak, but it can have asymptomatic stages. So anyway, lots of STIs have asymptomatic stages or are completely asymptomatic. Okay, true or false? HPV is the most common STI. Who thinks that's true? Who thinks that's false? Oh, it's true. Oh, yeah. 79 million Americans have HPV. 14 million new infections a year, and most people will get it at some point. So people won't necessarily know they get it, but yeah, this is the most common STI, extremely prevalent. But the good news is that there's a vaccine, right? Okay, true or false? You can't get herpes if you use a condom. Who thinks that's true? Who thinks that's false? Ah. Yep, that's false. So condoms offer some protection, but not 100%. So still offering some protection. Who can tell me why it offers some protection, but not all? Yeah.
If you have an outbreak, you may have which can spread.
Yeah, that's part of it. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it can spread through kissing and cold sore. Yeah, the basic gist of it is that a condom or a barrier covers some skin, but it doesn't necessarily cover the whole area where herpes, the virus can be shedding. Yeah. So this is part of why it's so common. So there's two strains of the herpes virus. There's HSV1, which tends to hang out around the mouth, and HSV2, which tends to hang out around the genitals. But they can cross-transmit. So you can get HSV1, which causes cold sores. You can get that on your mouth, and then you can give someone oral sex, and it can show up on their genitals. So you can get HSV1 from your aunt as a child, from them kissing you, and far before you're ever sexually active, and you can actually give someone genital herpes. So that's an important thing to know. So if you ever have cold sores, make sure that you're using a barrier if you're ever going to have contact with someone's genitals. But HSV2, the genital herpes one, 1 in 6 Americans have that, and even more people have HSV1 that causes cold sores. It's incredibly common. Okay, true or false? Bacterial STIs are curable, while viral STIs are generally only treatable. True or false? If you think that's true? Yeah. Who thinks that's false? Yeah, that's true. Antibiotics can cure bacterial STIs, but viral STIs, even HIV, are now treatable. So that's dependent on whether or not you have access, so that requires access to medical care, but those are treatable. Okay, so true or false? STIs like gonorrhea make you more likely to contact HIV if you're exposed to it. This is a little bit more advanced question. So if you have an STI like gonorrhea or chlamydia, that makes you more likely to get HIV if you're exposed to it. Who thinks that's true? Who thinks that's false? Okay, this is true. So this is an important public health thing. So having one STI makes the genitals more vulnerable to other STIs. So this is like a little bit more of an advanced public health concept, but with HIV, because it attaches to white blood cells, if you have another infection of any kind, it has more of those white blood cells to attach to. So this is safer sex a little bit beyond barriers. So this is why if you go and get treated and tested for other STIs, this is a form of safer sex. This is why it's important to go get tested and treated for these other STIs to keep yourself as safe as possible. And this is just an example. I like to have this visual here when I'm talking about HIV because this is an example of an HIV test that is done orally. Some people are really freaked out about blood tests and they don't get HIV tests because they're really freaked out about having a needle. But you can actually test for HIV with this oral test. It's called OraQuick. So some clinics do that test. All right. True or false? You can get herpes from oral sex, but not gonorrhea or HIV, or HPV. True? Who thinks that's true? Who thinks that's false? That's false. You can get all of those orally. So an important piece about this is when you're getting tested, if you're having oral sex, make sure that you ask your doctor for an oral swab as well as a vaginal swab or an anal swab if you are having all of those kinds of sex. So if you do a urine test, for example, for chlamydia and gonorrhea, and it tests negative, but you've had oral sex, you could still have chlamydia and gonorrhea in your throat. It's site-specific. So you have to, it involves a little bit of advocacy and some potentially uncomfortable conversations with your doctor. But condoms and dental dams can prevent transmission. All right, true or false? When someone with a vagina gets a Pap test, the healthcare provider automatically tests for STIs. Who thinks that's true? Who thinks that's false? Yeah, that's super false. You have to ask for every STI test you get. It's amazing to me. A lot of doctors are just as afraid as you are of having a conversation about sex. A lot of doctors have had less than 8 hours of training about human sexuality in their whole careers. And so you have to actually ask specifically, and they don't necessarily know your risks, so you have to ask for the tests that you want to get. It's a key grown-up skill. All right. So these are to inform your choices, not to scare you. All right? Okay. What is it that keeps people from practicing safer sex? I'd love to hear from you. What are the things that you think keep people from practicing safer sex? Yeah. Absolutely. Access to contraception. Yeah. Awkward conversations. Yes. Who wants to have those? Absolutely. And with awkward conversations, what is it that makes them awkward? Yeah. Yeah, people don't have the language. They've never seen that modeled before. Yeah.
Talking about contraceptives effectively defines the relationship, which a lot of people are scared to do.
Yes, yeah, if you're having that conversation, you're defining the relationship. People are scared to have that. There's all sorts of feelings. How many of us are actually taught about feelings and how to talk about feelings and how to manage that? Absolutely. Yeah. Oh, yes.
So
Social expectations, yeah. Lack of consent or the state that you're in, yeah, when you're having that conversation, absolutely. It doesn't feel as good. Like, thanks for the honest response. Absolutely. We'll talk about some ways to make it feel better, but I think there's a reality to that. Like, if there's a physical barrier, there is totally a reality to that. Yeah. Any other? What? Yeah. It can feel accusatory, right? So if you're asking someone to use a barrier with you, it might be saying, "I don't trust you." That what you're saying about your status. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. It's not as convenient. Yep, totally. Yeah. Any others? Why people don't practice safer sex? Yeah.
I mean, the reaction of the other person, just sort of what you're saying there, but if you've had a bad experience with somebody being reluctant, be afraid of that reaction.
Right. If you've had a previous experience with someone being reluctant, you may be less likely to ask for something with a new partner. Totally. Yeah. There's lots of reasons and lots of resistances. So some of these are going to be individual, and some of these are inevitably hard. And so one of the things I want to acknowledge is that I'm going to give you some tips and some education about how to make this easier, but I intentionally use the word easier, not easy. I don't want to ever present that this is an absolutely easy thing to incorporate, just how to make these things easier. A lot of what was brought up is about these emotional aspects of these conversations and how to develop good communication skills. In no way can I, in our presentation, communicate a comprehensive emotional intelligence and sexual communication skill set onto you. Like, this is a thing that's built over time and over practice, right? So what my intention is to sow the seeds in you of how can you, over time, get better at sexual communication and invest in that as a skill set, and hopefully seek out partners who are also similarly committed to having those emotionally intelligent adult conversations about safer sex and building that as a habit, and being with people who are on that level with you. But that isn't easy, and I do just want to acknowledge that. All right. So let's meet some of the methods, because I do think that becoming more familiar with these things and developing more competence with these things does make that easier. That's certainly a thing that makes that easier. If you're not as familiar with them, that makes the whole thing infinitely more difficult. Okay, first one, external condoms. So for what sex acts would you use external condoms? Yeah. Yeah. Yep. Oral sex, yep, lots of things. Yep, so I got a whole little list here. So penis and vagina sex, anal sex, oral sex, on a sex toy. So sometimes sex toys, you're either using them with different partners or they're made out of materials that aren't safe for your bodies. Cut open and used as a dental dam, or for a pre-sex water balloon fight. Lots of reasons to use a condom. They're super flexible. Okay, so I'm gonna demonstrate proper steps for using an external condom, and I need a volunteer to hold my condom demo. Who would like to come up here? Yeah, come on up, yeah. Okay, so I have an emoji baiter here to be my demo here. Have any of you seen the emoji baiters? They're these little, it's a little eggplant. How cute is this? And it's a vibrator. I think they're adorable. Okay, can you hold this for me? Okay, so I've got a condom here. This is a skin condom. These are non-latex condoms. They're made out of a material called polyisoprene. That's safe for people who are allergic to latex. I'm allergic to latex, so I can't touch it. So what do I want to do before I even open the condom? Expiration date. Awesome, yes. And this does not expire until 2019. Oh, I have so much time. Okay, then what do I do? What do I do before next? Check for perforations. It's got a nice little puffy air bubble in there. Okay, and then what do I do? Yep, tear off the corner. I'm going to move it to the side, and then I'm going to find the nice little ridgy bit that makes it easier to tear it off. I'm not going to use scissors or my teeth. Like, even though that's kind of like ferocious and kind of sexy, like, I'm not going to use my teeth. Okay. So I'm going to tear it off. Okay, and then I'm going to, slide it out. and worry about the garbage later. Yeah. Okay, and then I'm gonna make sure that it's rolled the right way before it comes into contact with anybody's bodily fluids or skin, okay? And the way you know it's rolled the right way is when it's sort of rolled like a beanie, right? So that you want it rolled down the right way. One way you can do this is just like a little puff of air. And so you get the tip like this. And then what's my next step? What do we want to always make sure if you're putting this on a penis? Pinch the tip, so important. I remember I had this conversation with one of my best friends. I was sitting at dinner with her family, and I mentioned something about pinching the tip and how I was teaching this workshop, and her mom was like, "Oh my God, I didn't know you were supposed to pinch the tip." And she had this sort of horrified look on her face, like of going back in her life, like all the time she didn't pinch the tip. It's like, always pinch the tip. So pinch the tip, and then you stick it on there, and then you roll it down. And sometimes you might have a big head of the penis, and then you might just need a little more effort, and then you roll it down. Ta-da! And then you might want to put a little more lube on it, because lube makes all barriers feel so much better. And then you do whatever play you wanna do with the thing. Excellent. Thank you so much. Round of applause for our volunteer. Why do you need to pinch the tip? Excellent question. The reason you need to pinch the tip is if there is an ejaculation that's going to happen. If there's an air bubble in there, the air bubble and the ejaculation, when that interacts, can put some pressure, and that can increase the likelihood that the condom will break. And that's obviously not what you want. Yeah. But if you were going to, say, put the condom on a sex toy, it doesn't matter if you pinch the tip because there's no ejaculation. But yeah, on a penis, definitely pinch the tip. Yeah. Okay. Excellent job, everyone. I loved the team effort there. That was really nice. Makes me feel supported in sexual health community. Okay. Let's talk about internal condoms. How many of you have seen an internal condom before? Oh, good number of you. That's surprising. Okay, I'm going to show you one of these. So they're also called female condoms, or FC2. That's the brand name. You can get them at health centers, or you can get them through a prescription. They can also be used anally, and they're made from a material called nitrile, so non-latex as well. The inner ring can actually provide stimulation to the partner that has a penis, and the outer ring can actually stimulate the clitoris, which is sort of interesting. When I did my master's thesis, I did it on the acceptability of pleasure-inclusive approaches to STI prevention. And there were some really interesting pieces of literature about marketing internal condoms to certain populations. And one of the studies that I loved was marketing them to a certain population as sex toys, and specifically around this whole outer ring stimulating the clitoris thing. And this particular study actually found an increase of demand for female condoms for this reason. I thought that was sort of cool. So they look like this, and they're kind of a strange shape, but the way they work, the internal ring, you squeeze it. It's similar to a Nuva ring, actually. How if any of you are familiar with a Nuva ring contraception, they get squeezed like this, and if you can imagine if this is a vagina, they get squeezed and then inserted like this. And then the ring kind of pops open around where the cervix is, and then this external bit stays open around the vulva or anus. So this outer ring can, with some people's bodies, line up with the clitoris, and then when penetration is happening, that kind of gentle tugging can feel good on some people's bodies. So some people like using these for partners who are extra girthy and have a hard time with external condom fit. That's one reason why some people like them. So I like to present those because some people haven't seen them and can be just a different option. That's what they look like inside. All right. So another option are dental dams. Those would be used for oral genital contact or oral anal contact. Finger cots for stimulation with hands on genitals or hands during any sort of hand-anal play. And then gloves. So I'm going to talk a lot about gloves because I think gloves are the super flexible toy that you can do super flexible barrier that you can do all sorts of stuff with. So you can use gloves for similarly, we can use it for hand genital play. You can turn them into dams, which I'll show you in a second. And they come in many different sizes, which can be a cool, sexy thing. They come in latex, vinyl, nitrile, and they can make your hand feel smooth like a sex toy, which a lot of people are into. Like, I like this visual. Like, you just have that smooth thing, and a lot of people are really into that. And it can make cleanup easier. Okay, so I'm going to show you this DIY. Where are my scissors? Where'd my scissors go? Oh, there they are. Okay. So you've got a glove here. One of the complaints people have about dental dams is that they can be hard to find. As I understand it, you have them at your health center, so this may be less of an issue for you. But as you move through the world in your post-university life, finding dams may be a little more challenging for you. And finding gloves, you can find at basically any drugstore. So you can take a glove like this. I think I got this at Costco. And if you cut off the fingers and leave the thumb hole, just cut off the fingers, and you could use those as finger cots if you wanted to. So then you just have this bit and the thumb hole, and then you want to cut an incision just up the line where the pinky finger would have been. I recommend doing this in advance of your sexy play, unless sort of teasing and denial and craft time are your kink. And then you open it up, and then you have a dental dam with like a thing to insert into whatever orifice is going to be part of where you are putting your mouth. Yeah? So that's one way of cutting your own dental dam. You can also take it, so this way you have, hold it with the whole hand, and then just remove the three fingers. Leave the pinky and the thumb. Just cut the 3 fingers. I think this would be a fun thing to do, like with your sex-positive friends. Like, make a bunch of dental dams for fun. So this is, then you have sort of like a hang loose shape here, right? And then you're going to do one incision, not the whole thing, just one layer of it, up the middle. And then what you have is a dental dam with 2 places for your thumb to hold it in place. Stretch it out and hold it in place. And then you put a little dollop of lube underneath it on the surface where you're going to be licking. And I think this is actually an upgrade to a regular dental dam because it's got handles. Like, and how cool and competent do you look? Like, look, I've made my own cool dental dams. And I think that's awesome. And they're easier to find. So, DIY dental dams, enjoy. Oh, thank you. All right. Okay. So where can you get these on campus? Where can you get safer sex supplies? Health education outreach? Okay, awesome. This is really good to know where on campus you can get this stuff, and so you can get this stuff before you need it. It's a really good thing. Yeah. Okay. So I'm going to give you my 10 tips for sexy, safer sex. All right? So you're familiar with the methods. You know you've busted some common STI myths. Now I'm going to teach you some of my favorite tips for increasing the sexiness and ease in your safer sex life. Okay? Okay. So one is get confident. Get familiar with using these methods on your own before you bring them into your partnered sex life. Sometimes people think that sexual activity, sexual conversations, all of this stuff needs to happen in the bedroom when you have someone else there. And I would love to dismantle this idea. It is so valuable to have sex conversations outside the bedroom and practice playing with these methods and getting familiar with them on your own. Like, play with them in your masturbatory life. Just play with them in your free time. Like, get a condom and practice putting it on a banana or on your emoji baiter, and just get familiar with what the mechanics are like of opening it, what a dental dam feels like. Make some of your own dams. Feel what it's like to have a glove on your hand. Find what lube feels good to you. All of these sorts of things. When you get confident and feel what these are like on your own, that can give you more confidence bringing those tools to a partnered situation. And confidence and competence are super sexy skills. That's just axiomatic. If someone judges you for your familiarity with safer sex, question their suitability for your bed. Just laying that out there. Okay, know your own boundaries. These are just some things to think about. Why do you want to practice safer sex? Is that important to you? Why is that important to you? What about that makes you feel safer? Try to put some language to that. I'd encourage you to think about this in your free time, not just when you get into a sexual scenario. Because if you're negotiating this with someone and they're just sort of asking you, like maybe they're not being mean about it, they're just sort of asking like, oh, why do you want to use a condom? Just be able to say, oh, because this is important to me for keeping me safe in this way. And have that language. When you get those clear answers, it makes that easier to communicate and assert. Okay. Get the right size. This makes a really big difference. Bodies are not one shape. So getting the right size gloves, getting the right size condoms, these things can make an enormous difference with how comfortable and sexy you feel using these methods. I've seen a lot of sex education with condoms where someone will like put a standard size condom over their forearm and see, this fits everyone. I don't think that's particularly helpful. Condoms come in lots of different sizes. There's slim fit ones, there's large ones, there's extra large ones. Lots of different brands have different sizes. And finding the ones that fit you and your body best are going to be the ones that you are more likely to use. So shop around. They are not all created equal. So luckybloke.com has a find your size thing. They'll send you a little package with a bunch of different sizes and kind of a general genre, and you can just try them on and find them, and it's amazing. It's a really cool service. Okay, find lube you like. I think lube is amazing. We have lube on all the tables. Uber Lube has very kindly provided a bunch of samples. Uber Lube's a really awesome silicone-based lube that's condom compatible, barrier compatible. It's just not compatible with silicone-based toys, but it's super awesome. And experiment with different lubes that you like. Not all lube is created equal though. A lot of lube that you might buy in a pharmacy has glycerin and parabens in it, which some vulvas are particularly sensitive to. So this is a thing to know. So sometimes people are thinking, oh, I hate lube, it makes me feel awful. It might be the glycerin and the parabens. So who knows which lubes are not latex compatible? Who can tell me? Oil-based, yes. Oil-based lubes can degrade latex, so you don't want to use that. So water-based lubes, silicone-based lubes, those are fine to use with latex. Okay. So I want to do a little thing with lube gloves. I need 2 volunteers who are comfortable touching lube, who have small hands. So Zippy, come up here. Yeah, small, yeah, you 2 come up here, yeah. Okay. All right. So sometimes people who've never been exposed to lube are like, I don't really know what I'm missing, and I've never really heard of this before. It's certainly not something that's taught in most high school sex ed rooms. So I need both of you to put this on your right hand. Okay. Nice. It's awesome when high fives are part of a sexual conversation. Okay. So I just need you to shake hands for a sec. And how does that feel, like with the barriers? Yeah. Okay. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to put a little drop of lube inside your glove. Okay. So just open that up a little bit. A little drop of lube. This is some glycerin-free water-based lube. Okay. And then I'm going to put a little drop of lube. You can like move it around a little bit. Okay. Warm it up. Yep. A little cold. And then a little bit on the outside there. And you can put a little drop of lube inside a condom too. You still want to make sure you pinch the tip, but you can do that as well. And now shake hands. And move it around a little bit. How does that feel?
That's incredible.
Yeah. So lube can make a night and day difference with the amount of sensation that is transmitted when you are using barriers. Like it's absolutely a night and day difference. I don't want to say that it is like not using anything at all, but it really does make a huge difference, and a lot of people don't know that it's a resource. So anyway, thank you very much. A round of applause for our lube gloves. I have some wet wipes for you. Thank you. Yeah. Excellent. Thank you, friends. Yeah, can't say enough good things about lube. So one of the common pieces of resistance to lube is that people are like, oh, I don't need lube. My partner's super turned on, but it's silly. Like lube is a thing that should be destigmatized, and if you're using barrier methods, particularly if you're using them for any length of time, lube is something that should be in every safer sex kit. Okay. I don't always use lube. And when I do, it goes more smoothly. Okay. Get barriers from materials you like. A lot of people really like condoms that are manufactured in Japan. Birth control pills were illegal in Japan until 1999, I believe. And while that is not so cool, it did drive a lot of innovation in the condom market because people were using condoms for contraception. So a lot of the Japanese manufactured condoms are super thin and can transmit a little more sensation. So that may be a thing to investigate and research in your spare time. This is an example of some. The skin condoms, like the one I demonstrated on the emoji baiter, that's a material that a lot of people like. They can enjoy the sensations of that, and it's latex free. The nitrile material of gloves and the FC2, that's something that a lot of people can enjoy. And some people are really into colors. They're like, yeah, I really want like a purple dick. Like that just really does it for me. So whatever it is that lights you up and makes it easier and sexier for you, explore that. Okay, have your stuff nearby. This is a moi box. So this is a company that designs boxes specifically to store your sex stuff. But you can get anything. Like you can get a cool box at any sort of store that is specifically for your sexy things. Having them nearby, having your stuff be nearby and convenient is going to make you more likely to use them. I highly recommend that. Build your own toolbox. And keep it wherever you need it. Have a travel kit. Have a little Ziploc bag in your backpack with like some sachets of lube, like the little Uber lube on your table, and a couple of condoms or a glove or whatever your types of sex that you're engaging in necessitates. All right. So maintain connection. So safer sex isn't just about the barriers and the tools that you're using, it's also about the attitude that you're bringing to it. Safer sex doesn't have to mean hitting the pause button. Sometimes what will happen is people will be building the momentum of the sexual chemistry they're bringing, and they're like, okay, we have to stop everything, and we have to like go find the stuff. But you can be maintaining connection as you're going to get whatever tools that you need. You can be maintaining eye contact, you can be maintaining playfulness, you can be finding them together. That doesn't have to be this big clinical thing. You can be maintaining connection as you do that. You can also have your partner using that barrier on you, or you can use it on them. And that's a way to maintain that energy and connection. I encourage you to ask some variation on the question, what's hot for you? One of the big reasons why people resist safer sex is that it ruins the mood, right? I hear this all the time, it ruins the mood. And I often think, wow, this mood thing is really fragile. This mood thing is just the most fragile china plate ever. And I often think, well, maybe you should worry more about building a stronger mood. Like, what can you do to be scaffolding that mood, to make that mood stronger so that integrating safer sex isn't going to make that thing break so easily? And so asking your partner what's hot for you, or what delights you, what turns you on, what really gets you going, something that feels authentic to you, like that statement of what turns you on, that's going to be individual. How to say that in your voice, so it doesn't have to be this specific sentence, but think about what would sound authentic in your voice is a good thing to add to your repertoire. So part of that is knowing what turns you on and how to share that, and then ask and listen to what turns them on. So I call this being a beacon of permission. So when you can volunteer this information first, and you can say, you know, what I'm really into is this, this, and this is how you can really delight me. And then what about you? How can I really delight you? That's being a beacon of permission that it's okay to talk about pleasure, and it's okay to be negotiating pleasure, and that's what's happening here. Being a beacon of permission. I don't want to say that this is an easy conversation, this takes practice, but that's a valuable thing to be adding to your sex life, and that's going to make that mood stronger, so a barrier is going to be a minimal impact on that. All right? Okay. Functional dirty talk. Functional dirty talk. Okay, so talking about what you want and then asking for permission excitedly. If they're not into the thing you suggested, just roll with it and move on to a new thing. And then incorporate the barrier into it. So the barrier doesn't have to be a separate thing from the sexy conversations that you're having with a partner. So this is an example. So you can say this kind of a dialogue where you're incorporating whatever barrier it is that you're wanting to be using in your sex life into the sexy dialogue that you're having with your partner. It doesn't have to be this separate thing. And again, this is an example. This doesn't have to be a rote thing that you say, but this is just a kind of thing to think about, like how you can be incorporating both consent, sexy language, and the barrier all at once. And if this is too much, like if you're just like, gosh, I've just never seen a female condom before, don't feel too overwhelmed. You don't have to know all of this, but this is just a way, I'm just trying to show you an example of the fact that these things don't have to be separate. Erotic language, building a sexy mood, using barriers, all of these things can be integrated into one. All right? All right. So remember, pleasure is more than just nerve endings. There was a study that was done at the University of Indiana at their Center for Sexual Health that was a nationally representative study about people's sexual health and pleasure that was rating people's sexual experiences, and there was no difference in the reports of arousal, pleasure, and orgasm, regardless of whether or not safer sex was used. And I think this is a really important study because what this tells us is that it's about the holistic sexual experience. So even though it's objectively true that a barrier can decrease sensation, how people rated their overall sexual experience, how much pleasure, how many orgasms they had, all of these other things, it was really about these overall experiences of sex that really highlighted how good sex was. Like what makes sex good for you is more than about nerve endings. So when you're thinking about how to cultivate your optimal sex life, be thinking about these other things and how to integrate all of those other things into your sex life as well and keep yourself safe at the same time. All right? Okay. Oh, yeah. Oh, okay, great. So I just want to say really quickly, I'm going to be live streaming on O School on November 4th, more about sexual communication. And so a little bit more about O School. It's this place for creating intimate spaces to talk about sex. And we're going to be having a raffle. So if you text pleasure to 66866, we're going to be having a raffle for sex toys. Am I correct? Yeah. And also, when you text pleasure to 66866, you'll also get informed about when the streams are coming up, and you'll get a weekly email. Is that right, Christina? Okay, great.
Hello. Oh, so we didn't get any cards. Does anyone have questions they want to ask Kate? We can also give people minutes.
Yeah, that's great. I love the anonymous questions. And
yes.
Yeah, go for it.
Microphone question? Okay, that changes things. So you said that HPV is the most common STI. Isn't it true that you can contract it or you can show positive and then you don't show positive?
Yeah.
At what point and do you disclose HPV to a partner?
That's a really good question.
Just before you go.
Yeah.
For the anonymous questions, we're going to have everyone turn something in, whether or not you write something. So just while this question's being answered, if you could all write down something if you have a question. If not, then just collect the cards. But just to make it anonymous, we're going to have everyone turn in a card. So feel free to write your questions now.
Yeah. So HPV is hugely endemic. Like this is changing demographically because this younger generation is getting vaccinated, and so the rates are declining. I think that the decision to disclose HPV, I think, is really individual. I personally would not say that it is someone's obligation to disclose HPV, but I think that's up to the individual. But what typically happens with HPV for most people is that they get it and it passes out of their system within, I think, 3 to 5 years. So it's a funny virus that way, where something like herpes you have forever, right? So I think the risk mitigation around it is a little bit different, and the harm that it can cause. So people have different opinions about that in terms of what is ethical and what's required. Some people feel like it's absolutely their ethical obligation to disclose. Other people feel like, look, 80% of people get this at some point. I don't feel as much the need to disclose, and I'll just practice safer sex. So it's really, I think, an individual decision. Is that helpful?
Yeah, and also, is it true that HPV, only certain strands are harmful for women, but no HPV really does anything for men other than them being a carrier?
No, that's actually so there's new research out actually about the risk of throat cancer actually being more prevalent for men. That's actually more common among men.
Isn't that, sorry, I feel like we're having a one-on-one conversation now, I'm sorry. But is that only if they contracted it orally, or?
So penile cancers are rarer than cervical cancers, but we're starting to see more throat cancers in men than we see in women that are caused by HPV. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, my pleasure.
Anyone else want to embarrass themselves?
Okay, we're gonna go ahead and collect the cards. Does anybody else have another question in the meantime while we collect them?
Thank you.
If not, we can just collect.
Aw, I like compliment cards. Thanks. Thank you. Great. Okay. All right. Okay, so one thing I'm conscious of is time. So one of the things that I mentioned earlier, one of the things that I really like to do is to actually do a stream with O-School where I specifically answer questions that have come up in my workshops from CMC. So that will be something that if your question doesn't get answered, then I will answer it on a stream. Right? Oh, thank you. Okay. Okay. Great. This is a great question. Okay. If I have genital herpes, I know I can transmit it from my genitals to my partner's genitals, mouth, or other orifices, but can I transmit it from my mouth? So herpes lives in, is site specific. So it's possible that you have oral herpes as well, because many people, like the majority of humans, have herpes simplex 1. But if you wouldn't be transmitting your genital herpes from your mouth. It's not systemic the way something like HIV is systemic in the body. Yeah. Okay. You spoke about talking with a partner about what gets them hot and vice versa, but what if a person doesn't know what they want and what turns them on? How do you have that conversation? I think this is incredibly common. How often in life do we really get encouraged to explore what it is that turns us on? What are our desires? What I would do is, if it's a partner that you will be having a more ongoing conversation with, a really kind thing to do would be to lovingly encourage them to explore sex educational opportunities so that they could explore the things that would turn them on, and how their body works and those sorts of things. Because most of us haven't had the opportunity to learn about how our bodies work. So I think if you have the space to have that conversation, I think that would be a really cool gift. The other thing I would say is make sure you don't just default to getting your needs met in the sexual exchanges that you're having. Make sure that there's some space to explore their bodies and help figure out what it is that they might want. I'd also say not be overly attached to them having an orgasm would be another thing. Like if they don't know what it is that does it for them, don't put too much pressure on them to perform in some way. Okay. Let's see. Okay. How do we know if most testing centers have testing for STIs that are contracted orally in the throat? That's a really good question. I would imagine that most health centers do that, because if they're testing for things like strep throat, they would be able to test for STIs. Yeah. But that's honestly something that I don't know. I don't always know the capacity of the health centers. All right. Oh, how do you use a dental dam for a blowjob? So if you're having oral sex on a penis, you would use a condom rather than a dental dam. Thank you for speaking with us. My pleasure. Okay. How do we talk to our parents if we get an STI? Well, that one gets difficult. Like if you're on your parents' insurance, if that would be the issue. That's a difficult thing. I think it depends on the nature of your relationship with your parents. And yeah, that's a really hard question to answer because I don't know what the specifics of that relationship is. Yeah, if that's your question, feel free to come up to me afterwards. That's a super loaded one. That may be all the questions that I have. So I will stick around afterwards. I will be eating my lunch. So feel free to come around and have a chat with me. I'm also presenting tonight on my talk, Aim for Awesome, which is all about enthusiastic consent and how to communicate your desires and needs in your sexual relationships. So, and tomorrow, oh yeah. Oh yeah, I'll be speaking tomorrow at the carnival. Yeah, and pleasure physiology. Yep, I'll be around. Yeah, and great. Well, thank you so much for having me. It's been such a pleasure to be here.